Hey.
Hey, finally it worked. All right. Well, thanks. Thanks for being willing to chat.
No problem. Is that light in the back too much?
Too much light in the back for me?
No, for me.
Oh, no, you're good.
Okay.
So I want to ask you about intuition.
All right. That's a pretty broad question there.
Yeah. Well, you know me.
Yeah.
No narrow questions.
No question too wide, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So given your experience in working with people, in terms of really, I mean, as a priest, can I say the word shaman? As a spiritual person, let me put it that way. Where does intuition come into play in terms of healing in any capacity? I mean, we can keep it on the spiritual front if that's useful.
Yeah. I think some of the hardest part of the work in terms of intuition, being an intuit, and some would suggest being an empath, in the relationship to healing is, where are you connecting with the wound, and having enough intuition to know whether you're wandering into territory that you really should go or not, and to have enough intuition to know what you're dealing with and who you're dealing with, and what is the depth of the wound that either another person is feeling, or another being is feeling, or the earth is feeling, or the cosmos, or even the divine is feeling, and where your part fits in to all that. But I think that it first comes to the point of someone recognizing, so what is their intuitive gift, and what they're actually intuiting. I think that's kind of where it begins. But without a sense of real intuition from a spiritual perspective, it seems rather difficult to engage in an active healing process. To be a participant in it. I'm always cautious with people that call themselves necessarily a healer, meaning that they're the only agent in the process, because I think that no singularity, no single person is the only agent. I think there can be, at the very least, it's the one asking for the healing and the other one participating. So the person that has the wound, or the entity, or the being, or the thing, I hate to use the word thing, but something that we might call inanimate, asks us to participate in the healing. So at the very least it's two, but oftentimes it's multiples of participants contributing their own particular part. So so you have to intuit, what is my part?
Yeah, definitely resonates with my experience, in terms of, I kind of shy away from using the word healer to describe myself
Yeah.
in what I do. I mean, it's more, hopefully I'm helping facilitate something that looks like healing.
Yeah.
That's how I would put it. And in that case, I'm not dictating or really, I'm not even the agent that's doing that. I'm more of a observer a lot of times.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in terms of trauma, you know, one of the problems that I encounter in working with a lot of people with trauma is that any kind of trauma tends to mess with someone's intuition, whether it be, you know, surviving the childhood abuse that can, you know, that experience, whether it's physical abuse, psychological abuse, or all of the above, that can affect somebody's their intuition, where they don't trust it.
Right.
And then, or the same thing, you know, in leaving an abusive relationship with, say, you know, a narcissist or somebody with a personality disorder, that can also mess up the inability to trust one's intuition.
Right.
So on a practical level, what are some components to, or pieces to, assessing whether or not, in terms of when you're trying to reacquaint yourself with your own intuition, how do you go about trying to parse out, is this my intuition, or is this the trauma talking?
Right.
I mean, is that even possible? I should probably ask that first.
Well, you're asking probably, you know, one of the most important questions, and pointing out is something that oftentimes gets overlooked, is how much damage has been done to my own psychic ability to intuit something, and taking into account, you know, what kind of damage that is. Is that short term, long term? Can it be recovered? How much can be recovered? When can it be recovered? And then now you're asking the question, how can that be recovered? I think the first part of the recovery is to recognize that there has been some damage done to that, and to be able to separate oneself from, to have a space where I can say, you know, I'm suffering a lot of grief, and I can't distinguish grief from depression, or I can't distinguish the pain that I'm feeling in one part of myself from the pain that is from externally from myself. You know, it's like everything in the world hurts me inside. And can I separate that difference out from what's going on in the world from my own particular self? And that's the first part of the work, you know, is can you distinguish that? Can you find enough space to find that gray area between yourself and what's external to you, or the cause? And that's hard. That's very difficult, because in a lot of ways, sometimes we don't necessarily want to. You know, it's like, you know, I'm going to take this in, and that's part of myself as being an empath. I think, though, it's necessary, you know, even working in a non-dual manner, that we have to be able to extinguish the exterior from the interior at some particular point, to recognize, okay, this trauma has been done to me, and it has caused me to lose confidence in my own intuition, and to where I can't trust it, and I feel like I'm overwhelmed, and I cannot distinguish from the external world or from the grief or from the trauma that's been done to me. By identifying that, that's really the first step. And to be able to separate it and say, that trauma was caused to me, and I was not the cause of it. And to be able to separate that out, and then to move into the place where, and now I can do something about it. And once you make those two steps, that I can do something about it, then I think it becomes really important for us to spend a lot of time taking note of all the things that we are intuiting. And, as simple as it sounds, I think we have to journal it. I mean, Carl Jung basically said, if you can't write it down, you'll never be able to recognize it. Mm. And so to be able to write those things down, and then we have a way of looking at it and saying, is this my intuition, or is this the trauma that's been caused to me that's making me feel this way? If it is my intuition, then I can ask the question, can I trust that? And then what's my measure of trusting that? In the end, we're asking the basic question, what is reality? And that becomes a pretty primal question, and it's one we always struggle with. But if we can ask the question in such a way that allows us to identify that, I am asking the question. Something else is not asking the question. I am asking it. And that becomes a part when I can say, no, I am asking the question, what is reality? Then I can begin to trust my intuition.
Mm-hmm. Tell me more.
Yeah.
What is the nature of reality? Let's jump right in.
Yeah.
Or what is the reality of intuition?
Okay. All right. I'll go with that. The reality of intuition really it's pretty much like living in a dream, and being able to know that I'm the one that's dreaming, and to know that the characters in the dream will respond to my pursuit, my questions, and sometimes we get really strange answers, but that's okay, because I'm the one living in this particular kind of dream. I think that's what distinguishes really intuition from, if we were talking about our senses, that would be something else. If we were talking about our thinking, that would be something else. If we're talking about our feeling, that would be something else. But we're talking about intuition. We're talking about the magic of imagination. And what that means is we kind of have to let go of those other things to see how far we can walk into the dream. And the further we can go into the dream, the more the magic we find in the imagination, and the more we can bring out of the dream to aid in our own healing, or the healing of others, or the healing of the earth, the world. That kind of work requires not operating on your own, and being willing to engage the material part of the world with the spiritual part of the world, so that they act together, work together, in a non-dualistic kind of way. So,
would you say there are any, or maybe what are the risks involved in if any, in engaging our intuition? And how do we, on a practical level, how do we recognize them?
Yeah. Well, there's always risks in engaging in the world of intuition and to use Carl Jung's term, the active imagination, because we have to distinguish out who are our allies, who's helping us, who's supporting us, and to be able to distinguish that voice from a voice that might be telling us to do harm to ourselves or to others. And my personal experience has been, and those who have mentored me, that our intuition is not going to lead us into harm, personal harm or harm of others. And the risk is that we can fall prey to the overwhelming allure of a voice that might be telling us to cause harm. And that can be very seductive for one of all different kinds of reasons. So the risk is, once we start walking into this world, is to make sure that we're buoyed. We're attached to
life rafted.
Yeah, we're life rafted to someone that we can trust, a guide, both in the world of the seen and the world that maybe only we see, and that we will trust them, that we can communicate with them, and they can help us and remind us. It's like, nah, that sounds harmful. And so I have a spiritual guide in my life, one specific person that I talk to about this kind of stuff. And there are other people that I talk to that I rely on, a small circle, but I expect them to remind me if I'm talking in such a way that can be either personally harmful or harmful to others. So that is the huge risk, I think. Mm-hmm. I mean, the other risks are probably more the willingness to suffer the chagrin of others that would say to us, well, you're just making that up, or or like, I would never trust that. You need to show me hard facts. I need data. And you'll just the risk is just to can you suffer that in really a gentle way. It's oftentimes easy to say, well, this is just who I am, and we wind up kind of we can be a harmful person, by just going around.
You could say words that you.
Yeah. So, that's another risk. You kind of have to endure that kind of pushback, I guess, another way. So, I mean, there are others, but that I think are probably less substantial than those two.
Yeah. So mainly harm coming to ourselves or others, that in the form of, if our intuition, in quotes, is suggestive of such a thing, that it's likely not our intuition in some way. It's I mean, we don't even have to identify what it is, but it's just not.
Well, if it's and I would say specifically in a case with trauma, it can be the trauma itself, or the results of the trauma, or the damage done to us by the trauma that's causing our intuition to lead either to self-harm or to harm others. And if that's the voice we're hearing, then that's why we need support. We need guides, we need counselors, we need therapists, we need doctors to support us in that, because those things can come our way. I mean, in my own personal experience, I suffered that and was hearing that kind of voice and really needed help. Get out of that place.
Yeah, the brainwashing really from the trauma.
Right.
Honestly, I mean that makes sense. And then that is almost can seem almost like it's implanted in your brain. This whole, like if it's, I mean, my own experience with this, has been to go down that self-reproach and beat myself up, and that's not necessarily helping me or useful at all. In fact, it's harming me.
Right.
And yet, part of that, I think, is being told that for a long time, such that then you think it's your own, right. your own voice in the head.
Yeah. And when you come out of it, then there are other people around you that then they'll be asking you all the time, well, is what you're experiencing, is that, subsequent of the depression that you've suffered, or the trauma that you've suffered from, serious rejection, or is that the grief that's talking to you, and so then you begin to doubt yourself, like, well, maybe is that it? Is that really what it is? And it takes a long time to recover that sense of self that says, no, this is what I'm experiencing. Yes, I've had those experiences, but I am experiencing this. And I have a broad vision, if you will. I can see beyond the periphery, and I can go into a room and feel the room, meaning I can intuit who's here and what's happening. And with some practice, you can do it before you even go into the room. One of my mentors it was one thing for me to sit in the room and to feel her coming before she showed up in the room. But asking her, like, how do you do that? And her being say, okay, fine, well, I'll teach you. You want to know? I'll show you how to do it. And so that, that having someone that can teach you, that you can trust, you trust them. And for them to also hold you accountable. It's like, don't get too carried away with that either. So,
No, it's just that you want ice cream, Jen. It's not that your intuition is telling you want ice cream.
Yeah, you just want the ice cream.
But I'm gonna call it my intuition.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. What are some other ways to, or just practical ways to step into one's intuition more? I mean, I know I've shared with you the story. I mean, the actual event of hiking in the desert and, having what I didn't recognize at the time was probably some sort of intuition speaking to me about a snake, and there's a snake in the path, and then not trusting it. Right. And then having that, oh wait, there's the snake. We almost stepped on it. And that just, and I would add the piece in that was, it didn't, in my experience, it didn't feel like it was my own thought or my own, it felt almost like it was external to me. Which I've read, some would say if something kind of pops into your head out of the blue and feels external to you, that sometimes that can be a symptom of it being an intuitive kind of experience, or intuition. How else do you recognize it or lean into it?
Yeah. Well, I think there's some ways to actually practice that. One is to pay very close attention to our dreams you know, to write our dreams down and see what our dreams are telling us, and then to be then aware of whatever symbol that appeared or whatever story appeared. Not that the dream is you know, telling us the future, but the dream is making us aware of what's going on around us, you know. So what symbolically appeared in the dream that may make us then aware of what's happening to us.
Yeah.
So something, you know, a snake appears in the dream. Well, maybe you should be watching out for snakes, you know. Yeah, so that could be one thing. The other thing is to another practice is to use something like tarot cards that or spirit cards or oracle cards, you know, whatever your flavor is, and you know, to spend time meditating on them and seeing what they're telling us, and then be aware of those things in the world that's happening around us. The most practical thing that gets overlooked more than any other thing is just do not dismiss something that comes your way. You know, oftentimes people will, you know, tell me, you know, oh, for some reason I decided not to go, you know, not to immediately, when the light turned green, not to immediately go. So I waited, and then a car drove through. You know, okay, well, that's good. I'm glad you paid attention to that. You know, there are lots of things that may not be as dramatic that we don't really pay attention to, and then all of a sudden something happens. You know, it's like, oh, I knew that cup was going to fall off the end of the table. Okay, well, why didn't you reach over there and do something before it did 10 seconds later? And so that becomes an actual practice of, can you pay attention to all the things that are happening to you around the world and take it serious? And the more we take it serious, the more what Carl Jung explained to us is synchronicity. We begin to live in sync with synchronicity. And we can actually live like that. And oftentimes it does feel like we're living in a dream. We may only have, you know, bits of it or pieces of it or glimpses of it. And then that's okay. You know, you got to take what you get. I mean, it's probably not really good to be driving around in your car if you're in a dream. You know, so some points we have to go like, oh, okay, I have to step out now. But to actually just pay attention to that, you know, and to recognize, oh, that is my intuition. And the more you use it, the more it comes. It's, if you use it, then it will respond to you. You know, it will not ignore you. In fact, it's craving for you to do something about it. And so the more you lean into it, as you say, which is a good term, the more you lean into it, then the more it will, it's like a spiritual muscle, for a lack of a better metaphor at a particular moment. You know, you use it and it's going to happen. So you know, your dreams, and working with your dreams and working with those things that you know that could be helpful, you know, archetypal images like tarot cards or something like that. And then as well as just paying attention to what your intuition is telling you.
What about in terms of leaning into it? I mean, I know that I happen to know you've read some Stephen Herod Buhner.
I have. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Inside track on that. And I know, like, I think it's in The Lost Language of Plants where he talks about some of those leaning into really sensing the physical world around us by, you know, going and standing by the oak tree and feeling its tingly energy.
Yeah.
And so in that, and in the back of that book, he has some exercises to do. And so a lot of them sound like they're, I mean, it's also an intuitive kind of experience as well. Yeah. What would you add to that along those lines?
Yeah. Well, Buhner and, you know, Rupert Sheldrake, you know, the scientist, Rupert Sheldrake. And there are some others those two. I think it probably influenced me as much as others have in that particular regard. There's a book that's titled "How Forests Think," and it talks about how trees in a forest will communicate with one another in long distances, and then via root and then using other things within the soil will transfer different kinds of minerals that one tree may need that it may not have, that another tree has more of. And so if the trees are going to communicate with one another, and the animals in the forest are communicating with one another and with the trees themselves and sharing things back and forth, then it opens up the next step is that we also can communicate with all of the entities that are there, and it becomes well, I guess it's easier to say it this way. If we're open and willing to, bare our souls to the tree, or anything else, then that will respond to us in like. Most of the time, I would say the vast majority of the time, what keeps us from being able to hear what the trees or the plants have to say to us is we just say, well, that's not going to happen. Okay, well, it's not. That's just like saying to another person, I really don't want to listen to you. And it's pretty soon they'll stop talking, because we've told them, I don't want to listen to you. But if you say to that person, I really want to listen to you, and I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to be quiet, I'm going to hear what you say, I'm going to let what you say, get into my heart and into my soul, into my skin, then you really will open up. Well, my own personal experiences is that the trees will, the plants will, the birds will, the stones will. And sometimes we have to just be as trivial as just to ask the tree, not to overuse the tree hugger thing, but, may I hug you, and, so that we can feel that. Well, the same, in Ireland is standing stones, and to ask the stone, can I hug you? And then to hear the prayers of thousands of years of life coming up through those stones. It is electric, and to stand in the tree. Oftentimes in Ireland, there's, in other places too, in Seattle I've been, where there's big gaping spots in trees, like a womb, and to crawl up inside of it and to talk to the mother tree and say, take me back, help me remember my own birth, help me to remember what I've lost. And sometimes the memory will go prior to your own particular physical existence, and you will begin to remember things that weren't a part of your lifetime, but are a part of your soul. And that can come from the trees that have lived long before you and have shared, in centuries and centuries before their own physical existence as well. And the stones, we're talking millions of years in some cases. I mean, here in Arizona and Prescott in the Red Rocks, those stones are 13.5 million years worth of wind, carving those stones. They have much to say, and our native friends can have much to teach us about that. So.
Yeah. Well, and aren't you you're part Cherokee, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and Irish. Both.
Yeah. Yes, pretty much both. That's, yeah. on both sides of my family, actually. So.
It's good. It's good. It probably makes you more intuitive.
Oh, and I guess back to Rupert Sheldrake, the whole notion of morphic resonance, that there's a DNA that carries itself, and I think that there is that natural sense of an intuitive part of our DNA that carries through with us. And I don't know that it's necessarily held to any particular group of people. I think some people's ancient voices and ancient teachers, ancient spiritualities have opened them up to that, I think, maybe with some more depth than others might be. But everyone comes from some tradition that has a great mythos to it, and if we can connect to that mythos and listen to it, we'll find that spot within ourselves. I mean, some people say, well, I don't have any intuition, I don't have any of that. Well, I mean, the real question is like, well, do you have any imagination? And, which I'm sure you do, a lot of times, like an engineer will say, well, I'm not really into it. I'm a thinker. And I'll say, well, do you have an imagination? And well, yeah, I mean, that's how I imagine, that's how I design what I'm going to do. I imagine it. And I said, well, that's intuition, and then we begin to look like, well, where did that come from in my life? Oh, my mom was an engineer. Oh, okay, well, good. Well, where did that come from? And so we begin to seek that out in our own lives, and we begin to recognize that there are all kinds of parts and pieces of ourselves that we've forgotten about, and we can be reminded of whether it happened in our lifetime or not.
Awesome. What in terms of so I asked you what the risk of going down this path is, in terms of, okay, there's the risk of being seduced really by whatever that is not our intuition, that is harmful. What do you think the risk is of not pursuing and not leaning into our intuition? Maybe you can answer that on any level you want, as a culture, as an individual. Not that we're really individuals on some levels,
right?
We're all connected.
Yeah, we are all connected. I think the risk is that we miss our opportunity to offer what our gift is, and so then it becomes reliant on either us living another lifetime, or someone else having to accept that particular part to play, and we become cut off from what true potential that we have as a collective group. And so I think that's kind of the result of the situation that we're in the United States right now. People have closed down and put themselves in silos and cut off their willingness to participate as healing agents in the not just a global arena, but more locally here in our own country, and I think that's a result of people having lost that sense of intuition, imagination for really what it is to participate as a being in the cosmos, and that I'm not here all alone. It's not just all about me. And so when we don't lean into that part of ourselves, then we lose the opportunity to participate in the potential. Um, and great suffering happens to us, to people around us, to our country, to the globe, to the cosmos. All suffers. You know?
Yeah. And yet it seems like that, I mean, if I had to sum up one of the effects really of some of the most difficult people, you know, someone who has antisocial personality disorder or narcissistic personality disorder or any of, you know, the more severe things like that that affect other people, it seems like that's a huge piece of it, is that one of the tactics that many of them utilize is shutting down. That's part of their abuse, right? That they shut down other people's intuition, try to see to it that they don't trust their intuition, or that that gets at least muddied where it's not clear. And but also they themselves, right, on some level must really, or it must be shutting off from that. What do you think? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, even without somebody suffering from a psychosis, you know, I mean, religion, for example, is one of the major abusers of humans in general. And the biggest abuse has been taking away people's intuition, their imagination, and replaced it with the religion, which says, this is how you need to think, this is how you need to feel, and we will tell you what is out there and what is real and what is not. And in religion has probably caused more psychosis in human beings than any probably other kinds of institutional abuse. And it's left a huge scar. And so we see the witness of that scar through the abuse of children, the abuse of women, and the advantage taken of the poor, to manipulate the poor to behave in such a way that the church wants them to. And I mean, that is one of the prime examples of a misuse of an institution's should be sacred care for intuition. That's what we're talking about, spirituality, really. And in the vast majorities of religions, maybe not all, but it's hard to find one that hasn't, at least in some case, abused it. The three major religions seem to be the most suspect. But we then do that on a individual level too, in order to manipulate people to behave the way we want them to. You know, sometimes we do it out of a sense of like, you know, well, I know what's best for my child, so I'm gonna tell them, if you don't do what I want you to do, then I'll take away something you want to do. But in a sense, that it also is another form of taking away someone's imagination, because we manipulate or control their own particular behavior. So one of the great failures is has been to deny people of their imagination and to take away their contribution to the potential. And so then in our country, what happens specifically around politics is we have, you know, rarely would more than 50% of the people vote in any population. And the answer, what the reason that they give is, what difference does it make? So that potential then has been taken away from the imagination, that I can participate, that what I do makes a difference, whether it's in my vote being counted or my energy that I put into caring to do so, which can make a huge difference. And so culture, society has taken that away from those people. And I think that example is just a microcosm of a macrocosm of other things that have robbed people of the potential to believe that they can be who they are and who they feel like they need to be. If we take that potential away from them, because we don't give them quality education, because we don't give them health care, we take away the basic needs. They're hungry, they're homeless. We take away their potential, we take away their life. We've robbed them of their imagination. And that is a crime against the cosmos.
Wow. Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
got on my soapbox there.
No, it's good. Yeah. It's good. So, kind of maybe we should probably wrap soon. But what kind of in closing? What's the takeaway in terms of? Obviously, there are practical things we can do for ourselves to try to step into it more. What about, for example, one of my children is highly one of the most intuitive people I've met, probably in addition to you. How does one allow for that and foster that without manipulating in such a way where there's space and allowance for that, but at the same time aware of the fact that our culture in general, our society tends to, I mean, I'm going to throw this out there, shut that down. Yeah. Science tends to box people in a little much. And intuition is not trusted. And that's a cultural thing as well as a personal thing, I think. So how do we, in light of that, how do we support intuition?
Well, I think there's some pretty very practical and important ways to do that. One is to create a safe environment for ourselves to experience our own intuition, and then create a safe environment, in our home or our personal space that says, yes, lean into your intuition, trust that, tell me about it, share it with me, and then create ways for us to encourage that in our own lives. And we forget that the greatest experience of intuition in human history experience has been meditation, silence, chanting, music, art, dance, running, walking, skating, anything that allows us to enter into a more integrative experience of our mind, our body, our psyche, and our spirit. The more that we can engage all four of those life platforms into a experience, the more the imagination, the more the intuition will activate and speak to us and be our ally. And so if we can create an environment in our own life and in the lives of others that are around us, then I think we're doing the best we can. One of my mentors in life would always say to me, well, say your prayers and do your little bit. And it took me a long time to recognize what he was saying is like, liberate yourself, do what you can do. You don't have to do more than you can do. Just do your part, do what you're supposed to be doing, and speak to the cosmos. And so he was Irish. He's Irish. What do you expect, right?
It was Irish.
It's Irish. Say your prayers and do your little bit. So
say your prayers and do your little bit.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. And
Good. I always enjoy a good chat.
Yeah, I love tapping into your wisdom.
Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, that's fun.
And have a good day.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.